It was said that Gol D Roger possessed the ability to hear the voice of all things, that the ancient stones spoke to him. But what if what Roger was hearing wasn't actually a thing at all? What if it was the remnants of something which was once alive?
What's up, y'all? You know what time it is? It's about to be that time.
Savage.
800 years ago, Nefertari D. Lily disseminated the Poneglyphs, large, unbreakable stones with ancient writing, to the allied nations around the world. Her hope was that centuries later an individual or a group of individuals would come together to read the messages inscribed on each stone to put together the puzzle of the true history, a full account of the atrocities that Emu and their compatriots would have committed so many years prior. Roger and his crew believed themselves to be those individuals, only to find out that they were too early, paving the way for a new generation to come to their own conclusions. Roger was in tune with a power that he couldn't quite comprehend. He could hear the thoughts of the living Neptunians, the Sea Kings, as could Odin. But the interesting thing about Roger's relationship with the Poneglyphs is that they spoke to him in a similar manner. He could hear them. The voice of all things treated these stones as if they were alive, and we've seen inanimate objects with souls before. But what if the stones weren't always inanimate? Aside from a deep look at Egyptian mythology, Blackbeard may be a very big clue to this line of thinking, as we put together the puzzle of his desires as well. Specifically, Blackbeard had a plan during the pre-time skip era, one that was executed flawlessly. He has one for the post-time skip, and we have seen enough of the pieces to understand what Hancock's love fruit, Pudding's memory fruit, and his other motives have to do with acquiring the fabled One Piece. Strap in, everybody, because today's super theory came from a recent discussion that I had with fellow YouTuber Dax Sake, and it goes in a ton of wacky directions, but whether it ends up being true or not, I hope that the journey is enjoyable and that this theory sparks something in you, and perhaps you're able to form your own conclusions as to what happened to these stones as well. But first, like, comment, subscribe if you're feeling the vibe. Archaeology has been a pervasive backbone of One Piece since the introduction of Nico Robin. Her dream was revealed to us in the hidden chasms of the Egypt-inspired Alabasta, surrounded by hieroglyphs and our very first poneglyph. The Egyptians had something similar to poneglyphs in our world as well, although they didn't call them poneglyphs, they called them steles. They were large stones with text, often ominously used as a grave marker or epitaph, which is interesting considering the poneglyphs in One Piece detail the death of an old world. Another name for these objects, often the plural, would be stela, which when you look at the names should seem very familiar because during the Egghead arc, we have been introduced, finally, to Dr. Vegapunk and his satellites. And what do the satellites refer to Dr. Vegapunk as? The stela. And what is Dr. Vegapunk doing? What has he been revealed to be doing? He is studying the poneglyphs, the steles. Most have written this name off due to its correlation with satellites and basically just outer space in our world. But with Oda, it's never that simple. With Oda, it can always be both and more. And now we have enough information from recent chapters to put together a rough image of everything. You see, Eiichiro Oda is one of those very rare authors that knew the ending of his story when he started the story. And his most trusted advisors have confirmed that he knows the ending.
And I remember in those meetings, Oda would tell me, hey, so this is the direction One Piece is going to take. This is the message. This is the theme that I want to really convey and communicate through this manga. And everything that he said way back then, when there was only 2 volumes, came true. So he's a man of his word. He had a vision way back then.
私は実はワンピースの最終回まで知ってるんですけれど、なかなかお話ができません。早く最終回迎えてくれないかなと思ってますが、皆さんの楽しみを奪うのもかわいそうなので、いつも悩んでます。
And I actually know how One Piece is going to end. I know what's going to happen, so I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys. but I can't wait to see everyone's reaction. It's a lot of responsibility right now. It's like at the tip of my tongue, but I'm gonna hold it in for your guys' sake.
No matter where Oda chooses to zig or zag in this story, the compass is always pointing north. He only expected One Piece to last 5 years, which means that a lot of what we need to understand about the end of the story is likely at the beginning. This is why so many characters from the first 5 years are becoming prominent again, relevant in such big ways. I'm talking about Shanks, Buggy, Crocodile, Mihawk, and there are 3 characters that are actually probably at the center of all of this, and that's going to be Marshall D. Teach, Blackbeard, Nefertari D. Vivi, and Nefertari D. Cobra. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about Blackbeard, but first, Vivi and Cobra. Basically, the Alabasta Saga is when we learned about everything. The first Poneglyph, Alabasta. The first time we learn about the Void History, Alabasta. The first time an ancient weapon is brought up, Alabasta. The first time we see a Vegapunk invention, believe it or not, Alabasta. And even now, in an arc so focused on science, the new central character, Dr. Vegapunk, is in trouble for looking into the past. In a story that is a true amalgamation of nearly every religion and mythology known to man, the mythology and cultures of Egypt are almost overpowering and could be the key to the biggest mysteries in the series. More on that after we discuss Blackbeard, the villain who was introduced to us immediately following the Alabasta Saga, but was foreshadowed and really introduced in the arc preceding Alabasta. The entire pre-time skip is us largely watching the world react to Luffy's actions as he traverses the Grand Line, but eventually, it's the actions of Blackbeard that dictate what Luffy is forced to react to. What Luffy does is cute, but Blackbeard's plans actually disrupt the world as we know it. Step 1, get the Yami Yami no Mi. Step 2, find a bargaining chip that he can use to get the world government's favor and make him a warlord. Step 3, open the box of being a warlord and infiltrate Impel Down to get the world's worst criminals to join your crew. Step 4, now with the proper backup, attack Whitebeard and steal his fruit. And step 5, become an emperor after taking over his territory. It's important to note that the original bargaining chip that Blackbeard wanted to use was Luffy, and fate intervened and gave him Ace. Every step worked, and in ways that were cleaner and more beneficial to Blackbeard than he ever expected. He wins even when he loses. Blackbeard has goals for the post-time skip as well, and it's also important to note that in an SBS, Oda revealed that Blackbeard's favorite hobby and pastime is archaeology. Putting the puzzle of Blackbeard's post-time skip desires should clue us in to the end game of this story. We don't understand the order yet, but we do know that Blackbeard is after the One Piece, and he's stealing rubbings to get there. As an archaeologist, he should know how to make rubbings himself, which is a real-world practice. They're called squeeze copies. You lay a wet piece of paper over the steelies, press firmly against it, and you get what we call a rubbing in one piece. Now, just like before, he also wants to use a bargaining chip to gain the favor of the higher-ups in Marijoa. He wants to position himself and make Hachinosu an actual recognized state. Initially, it looked like Blackbeard was going to use Kobe to get that seat at the table. But just like in the pre-time skip, a bait and switch has happened in the story where it looks like he may be trying to use Garp instead. Blackbeard needs Pudding, either for her memory powers or for her to awaken her third eye and be able to read the Poneglyphs. Another fun fact about the real world is that many cultures believe that you can open your third eye through hypnotism, and Blackbeard just so happens to have a hypnotist on his crew. Blackbeard took an interest in Moria's fruit, and even used Absalom to bring him out of hiding. The higher-ups in Marijoa at the end of Marineford also seemed very interested in Moria and his ability as well. But most important of all, and most interesting of all, is that Marshall D. Teach has an extremely vested interest in the Mero no Mi, Hancock's love fruit. And he deemed it so important that he traveled to Amazon Lily himself and was ready to fight the Marines to get that fruit, but not Rayleigh. Is it because Rayleigh may be able to see through Blackbeard's plan? Is he one of the few people that actually knows what the true importance of the love fruit is? What do these things have in common, and what is the larger picture at play? Blackbeard asks Hancock straight out if her ability can be used to depetrify a previous user's work. Some feel this implies that he wants to depetrify a person, perhaps Rox D. Zebek. Well, what if they're half right? What if he wants to depetrify a person that is quite literally a rock? If the voice of all things can be heard from the Poneglyphs, could they at one point have been a person? Instead of reading the Poneglyphs, could Pudding's memory powers be used to extract memories from within the stones to reveal the void history? Could they work on objects if she awakens? Could the giant hat at Marijoa be what he wants access to? Could Pudding's memo fruit be used to extract memories of Joy Boy from the hat? Most have been led to believe that Joy Boy was some sort of a giant. A lot of things are pointing towards that. One that actually did eat Luffy's Hito no Mi model Nika. Now, due to all of the snake imagery in One Piece and the Shandians worshipping a literal giant blue snake as the avatar of the sun god, I've had a theory that he, or one of the gods from the Void Century, maybe even Emu, was quite literally a blue snake or snake-like dragon that ate a fruit and became a animal-human hybrid like Chopper. Link for that video below. Was Lily's last-ditch attempt to save this world a pact with Joy Boy, where he, a giant being, offered himself or sacrificed himself to be the literal carrier of the message of the future? That the Poneglyph language was actually some sort of a tattoo written on his skin by the Koski before or after being petrified by the Mero no Mi? We've seen the ancient races of this world drawn to tattoos. Lunarians, Shandians. Could Dragon's tattoo be in some way relevant to all of this? Was the petrified Joy Boy split up by the Opi no Mi? That would explain the cube shape of the Poneglyphs, and the red Poneglyphs could perhaps be indicative of the four chambers of the heart. Alternatively, having Buggy's Bara fruit be intensely important to the Void history within this context would be a great meta joke and solid reasoning for why Roger would have sought after it, why it was on his ship, and it's more fun to me and holds more weight than it being Law's fruit, personally. Some of you might be saying, Buggy, what does Buggy have to do with any of this? Yeah, I get it. Law's fruit makes more sense because we've actually seen him chop things up and move them around at will within his room. But as we've now seen with Gear 5, Luffy, a rubber man, is able to unnaturally force rubber properties onto objects and his opponents. It's my belief that should Buggy learn to awaken, it would be the same principle. A man who can split himself into pieces would then be able to split objects and other people, essentially granting him a key component of Law's powers, allowing the second devil fruit that we ever saw in the story to be intensely involved in the endgame. Alternatively, learning that Joy Boy himself never had the Nika fruit, but rather the Bara and split himself up for the cause would be some fun irony, but it makes far more sense if someone close to Joy Boy, maybe even his right hand or best friend, had the Bara, and Joy Boy trusted them to safely divide him into 30 pieces for the cause. This idea of being split up ties directly into Egyptian mythology. Now, I want to get into the story of Osiris, which is a very interesting Egyptian tale. Osiris was a prolific ruler of Egypt and a descendant of the sun god Ra. Yes, sun god, but that's not the focus here, nor is the fact that Osiris's soul was its own god, the ram god. Osiris was a god of fertility and a benevolent ruler of Egypt. His brother Set was jealous of him and organized a silent coup in the disguise of a giant party complete with a party game. Whoever could fit inside this chest gets a wonderful prize. The chest was designed with Osiris's exact measurements in mind, so he wins. Everybody at the party seals up the chest and sends it down the Nile. The chest eventually washes up on the shores of Byblos, and the wood of the chest grows into a gigantic, majestic tree. Osiris's wife, Isis, teams up with Set's wife, Nephtet, to search for his body. She comes upon the tree and eventually is able to extricate him. Naturally, he's dead. She decides to search for a way to resurrect her husband. While she's gone, Set finds Osiris's body, chops it up into pieces, and throws it back into the Nile once more. Isis then goes on a new journey to reassemble her husband's remains for a proper burial. But ultimately, all of her trusted companions end up with little pieces of him to remember him. Now imagine a one-pieceified version of the Osiris tale where Set is Emu, and Joy Boy, or perhaps even the original Nika that the fruit is based on, was Osiris. That they ran the ancient kingdom, were betrayed by Set, thrown into a chest, drowned, and became a giant tree. And what if that is the origin of devil fruits to begin with? That all fruits are born from Nika. We owe everything to desire, creating an eventual callback to Chapter 1 when we see the Nika fruit in a chest, just as the original Nika, Joy Boy, Osiris was left in a chest. Another callback to the early parts of the story is Gaimon, a character who fits so perfectly inside of a chest that Oda had to have been thinking about this back then. And not only did he become friends with Luffy, he also became friends with Buggy. Nefertari D. Lily plays the role of either Isis or Nephtet, searching for the remains of perhaps a lost love or just a friend. But the twist on the story is that the one who is responsible for splitting Joy Boy into 30 pieces and distributing him amongst the allies would have been Lily's idea, or perhaps even Joy Boy's dying wish. Nefertari D. Vivi has been linked time and time again to the Niku fruit, Kuma's fruit. In an SBS, someone brought up what is now known as the 2-9 theory, where every member of the Straw Hats had a fruit that could be converted into a number in Japanese, all but 2 numbers. Ni Q. Literally 2 and 9. 2 in Japanese is Ni and 9 is Q. Can't get any more literal than that. The Nikyu no Mi is the 2-9 fruit. Vivi was on the title page, the cover page, of the chapter that the Nikyu was introduced to us. Their partner in Baroque Works was Mr. 9, and their birthday is 2-2. There are a lot of really just damning evidence that Vivi could end up with this fruit at some point, but maybe it was never meant to be about Vivi at all, and that it's actually that Lily is the original user of this fruit. How else were the Poneglyphs sent to all of the allied nations? If she had the paw fruit, they go exactly where they need to go immediately. And maybe that's also why the sea cat is a revered species in Alabasta, because it reminds the citizens of Lily, who would have had paws on her hands. We were told that the Poneglyphs were made on Wano, so that stage is the setting for Nefertari D. Lily's great mistake, as Emu liked to refer to it as, right? So we cannot understate the importance of Wano in the story, and Shanks was so sure that Blackbeard would go there, which is why he went there, expecting to intervene in whatever Blackbeard needed to do there. And a weird correlation here is that Wano is the home of the continent pullers, and Blackbeard's flag has 3 skulls, just like Orz's belt had 3 skulls. And Wano is one of the only lands outside of Punk Hazard, which was man-manipulated. Wano is the only place that we've seen multiple climates. And on the way to Drum, Vivi explained that every island only has one climate, one traditional climate. Is Wano literally just several allied nations that have been stitched or sewn together by maybe the Ito Ito no Mi Doflamingo's fruit or Leo's Stitch Stitch fruit, and then carried by an ancient Oni, some sort of giant being, maybe Joy Boy, and put on top of a mountain, creating a new Pangea, which, for those who don't know, Pangea is what the world in its most ancient primordial form was called, when everything was still one landmass. We know that the Ors Jr. at Marineford was Ors the Third, right? But what was the Thriller Bark Ors? Because we don't really have a firm understanding of that. Was it Ors the First? Was it Ors the Second? Was he Joy Boy's son, maybe? Was Joy Boy the senior, the one before the Ors that Moria had manipulated? Could it be that the reason Blackbeard was interested in Moria and the Kage Shadow Fruit is because he wants to take the Poneglyphs, stitch them together, and then put a shadow into it and reanimate it? All of that would make Thriller Bark even more thematically relevant, and also Marineford, because then you would have the distant relative of Joy Boy, Ors Jr., trying to save the brother of the current Joy Boy. Or is Joy Boy less of a reincarnation situation like Poseidon and more of a Clubwaterman? We learned of the 21 grams of the soul. Could Lily with the Niku fruit have pushed Joy Boy's soul out of his body, creating a Clubwaterman that was free to fly around and search for or possess a worthy successor? Is that why Kaido or someone like Rox or King, people that were close to Kaido, possibly believed that he could have been the return of Joy Boy? Also going back to the blue snake of it all. A dragon can be a blue snake, similar to Kashi, the image that the Shandians were worshipping. Could Ace have been at one point the ideal candidate? Did Kaido know that? Is that why he tried to interfere with Marineford and Shanks, for whatever reason, stopped him? Did Shanks know about this? And perhaps there's a situation where Shanks wanted Ace to die so that his horse could become the new Joy Boy. Could it be a situation that when Ace died, the soul that may have been in Ace, which is why Roger was so sure that his son would be the new Joy Boy, or at least he believed it to be, that soul then went and found Luffy. There's a key moment right before Luffy goes Gear 5 where, he's about to lose against Kaido and he pushes his energy, his haki, back inside. But is that his haki? Is that his power? Could he have been pushing Joy Boy's soul back inside and taking control and saying, that no, he's the worthy successor? Was the soul of Joy Boy trying to escape and find a new successor, thinking that Luffy wasn't worthy in that moment? Was it not haki, but a manifestation of Joy Boy's soul? Is inherited will tangible? There's a visual link between these moments and a lot of Thriller Bark with the shadows, the Kage no Mi, even Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi, and now with Imu's yet-to-be-explained abilities as well. Wano will be important to all of this. There is a reason why Toki needed to get back to Wano, a reason why she also left. It's the land where all of this transpired 800 years ago. It's where Lily likely went to hide from Imu, where a plan for the stones was devised. The Kozli clan wrote the Poneglyph language. They are very much the tattoo artists in this scenario. But was Big Mom's line, "It's here, isn't it?" part of the One Piece, referring to the idea that the 30 Poneglyphs are the body of Joy Boy? And if Joy Boy was an ancient Oni instead of a snake, a cool idea has been that Onigashima is the original Joy Boy's skull, leading to the decisive battle of Luffy and Kaido over who is or isn't the true Joy Boy, taking place on the literal Joy Boy's skull. And if Joy Boy did lose his head in some sort of way, it could be a parallel and callback to Logtown, where Luffy, aka Joy Boy, was about to get his head lopped off, especially if Buggy's fruit becomes important in the Void History flashback. All of this to say, is the point of this story to reassemble the Poneglyphs, to reassemble Joy Boy into one piece. In every portrayal that we've ever seen of the Poneglyphs, they are all connected by some sort of thread tying them together. So maybe this is a massive group effort that is necessary to actually pull this feat off. That one man may not be able to do it on their own, right? Buggy and Law may have to move the pieces back together into a shape of a person. Doflamingo, his string fruit is used as the sinew or string that ties it all together. Hancock depetrifies once it's in the shape of a person, Moria adds a shadow, and Pudding awakens the memories. We're getting wacky. Or perhaps it's Kuma's fruit that is used for the memory aspect of this. We got a curious flashback between Vegapunk and Kuma talking about the Niku Niku's ability to extract memories similar to Pudding's ability. If it's not the case with literally being Joy Boy, could each of the stones have a voice because the memories of Void Century allies were inserted inside the rocks? Keeping the Pudding aspect of it all very relevant because she still should be able to extract those memories, if that's the case. Is Blackbeard sending troops to Egghead because S-Snake is there and has a reproduction of the Mero Mero no Mi, which we know he wants? Does he want one of the Vegapunks? York? They could recreate it. Does he have an interest in the Niku Niku? If the fruits were to fall into the hands of Blackbeard, then perhaps he would have all the necessary pieces to reassemble Joy Boy. Many of these key powers belong to the original warlords. We're talking Hancock, Kuma, Moria, Doflamingo. Was that the original point of the balance of powers in the first place? Not so much to use them for peacekeeping, but to keep them close and on a leash. And now that they have the Seraphim, their importance is irrelevant. We know that 3 of the Seraphim are on their way to attack the Cross Guild, and that green blood cannot replicate the properties of a Logia Devil Fruit. Imagine a scenario where the Cross Guild is up against S-Crocodile. Out of nowhere, Mihawk jumps in, slices him in half easily. Everybody's cheering, and then S-Crocodile puts himself back together, signaling that the green blood infused with him is actually Buggy's Devil Fruit, enraging Crocodile that his DNA would ever be entangled with this buffoon. S-Croc would then dart forward and attack someone else in the Cross Guild, but in the process would split them into pieces, but they would still be alive. Everyone turns to Buggy, your power can do that? And that is how Buggy learns about the untapped potential of his abilities, leading to his potential role for the endgame. Now, I've been against this idea because no one in the government even knew that Buggy had a fruit during Impel Down, so getting his DNA is a question of logic, but it sort of is for a lot of the Seraphim. Plus, I'm still team S-Croc has a Vonkov's fruit, but I'm coming around to this Buggy idea just because of how well it fits into this theory. Perhaps Shanks was wrong about Blackbeard going to Wano because he couldn't until he had those necessary pieces, until he had the Mero Mero in hand. Meaning that once Blackbeard does have these pieces of his plan, he may still have to go to Wano, leaving a story-relevant reason for Oda to have Yamato stay behind. Is it all for Pluton, or is there more to all of this? Blackbeard becoming a warlord was about access in the pre-timeskip era. He needed that access in order to infiltrate Impel Down. Making Hachinosu a recognized state and kidnapping Kobe and everything with Garp in order to get that should be viewed from the same lens as it would give Blackbeard access to Marijoa. Is this all for the giant Straw Hat? Does Blackbeard know about it? Is it one of the missing pieces of this puzzle? Could it be that you can't fully reassemble Joy Boy without it? When Oars was rampaging around Thriller Bark, he wasn't comfortable without his hat. Could it be a similar issue? Could the Niku Niku have imbued a piece of Joy Boy into the hat? Is that why the government has never been overly concerned with someone really finding the One Piece? Because without this crucial missing piece, everyone would be too early, making it less about a prophesized date and more that Roger, because of his illness, just literally ran out of time. Could the ancient robot under Egghead be a counter to Blackbeard's plans? Could the idea of reassembling Joy Boy like Osiris be too crazy even for One Piece, even with powers like the Kage Kage? Or could Blackbeard's idea of recreating and reassembling Joy Boy be another example of Blackbeard cheating to get to the end? Essentially, Blackbeard would be using all of these factors and bending these wills to literally restore the past, whereas Luffy, through hard work and sheer determination, has revived the spirit of Joy Boy, making it so that he would never have to reassemble the pieces at all, because Luffy is Joy Boy, incarnate. Blackbeard seems to be after these rocks in the name and vein of famed pirate Rox D. Xebec, his ship, the Saber of Xebec. Did Rox say something at God Valley that made its way back to Blackbeard? But Blackbeard is taking what is being said too literally. That the goal was never to put the pieces literally back together, but that the world would belong to the one who unites the world with what the pieces represent. Simply put, no matter what, each stone has a message. And reassembling that puzzle should tell us the story of the true history, which in turn would make the ills of the world known, revealing the atrocities that Imu committed to control this world. After passing the information to every nation via maybe Vegapunk's internet, or perhaps Vivi's new connection to Big News Morgan's, the very biggest news possible would go out to every country, sparking the revolution of a lifetime, where now all of these countries would head out to bust down Pangaea Castle's doors, the flames of revolution lit by Nico Robin's translations, and the trust that the people have for Nefertari D. Vivi spreading this message would lead to the toppling of the government by the Pirate King and freest man in the world, Monkey D. Luffy, ultimately uniting the world and creating One Piece. P-E-A-C-E.
I've been swimming deep, deep. Savage.